Welcome to Life Workshop, where we discuss the forgotten basics. Today's subject is one of the hot ones, discrimination or vetting. As we know that this is a kind of a hot topic nowadays, and I want to just see that, where we are at with this thing. But before we get started, I would like to ask, that basically we need your help, and please help us by sharing this podcast in case you find it, helpful. As well, I would really love to see that if the podcast that we do, if it helps you to change your mind or to get you thinking, really, again, to hear that, it helps me to understand the effort that I'm putting into this, which is actually quite a bit, if it is worthwhile, which I hope it is. But I'm going to keep going, but, your feedback would definitely get us going. But the moral of the story is with this podcast on this topic, I would like to see that if discrimination is as often as we think it is, or is it overrated? And the reason that I'm bringing this up, because it's very important to know where we are with this. We should have a right diagnosis, otherwise we will have the best treatment for the right diagnosis, or for the wrong diagnosis, I should say. We should see, what's the problem before we think of the solution. And if the problem is not as serious, then we are paying too much attention to it, or maybe there are other things that should pay attention that we are not paying as much attention. So, to get going, first of all, I would like to ask Bo. Oh, by the way, your most favorite host and co-host. Sorry, I forgot. Bo and Mo.
Yeah, hello.
I just got going. Okay. But the question that I have is for Bo as well as you, the audience. I would like you to think about this for a moment. Have you, meaning Bo, as well as the audience, have you guys been discriminated against? And what basis?
Yes.
Would you like to share what basis you get discriminated against?
Well, there's been, everyone gets discriminated against in the world for something or other, right? Whether it's, it could be your class. A lot of the time it's that, intelligence, height.
Correct.
Let's say these sorts of things. And I've seen that before, I've heard a lot of only a white person. I've heard a lot of that,
So how do you know you have been discriminated against those things?
How do I know?
Yeah.
Well, people tell you.
So did they tell you that, for example, because of your height or because of your intelligence or because of, the way you look? Have they told you that?
Yes.
Okay. Because I have asked the same question from a lot of people. That, do you feel you get discriminated? And everybody has a story. Everybody gets discriminated in a way.
Yep.
But when I ask them, can you prove it? Often they can't. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you would be probably one of the few that you just say that, they have told you. There is discrimination. But I think most of the time it is what we think, not what the other party thinks. That's
true, for sure. It's a lot of the time it's in your own mind.
That's correct.
Yeah, definitely. But it's just what happens in the world. People
some of it actually doesn't happen. This is exactly where I'm going with that. For example, I had this lady that she said because she's overweight, she said that she gets discriminated against that. I said, how do you know that? And really, she didn't. It was more of her thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I have asked a lot of, people of color, including myself, for example, that do you feel that you have been discriminated against? Very frequently you hear yes. Based on what? Color. How do you know that? Have you been told that? And at times is. Don't take me wrong. But I don't think it is as frequent as we say. So I would like the audience, you guys, if you think you have been discriminated, is it really what you're thinking or somebody told you? And probably is. I'm not denying that there is discrimination. There is for sure. But it's not as frequent. That is what I'm trying to say. And there are ways to figure that out, to be able to see that, are we really discriminating against each other as much as we talk about? Or it's not as common? And the other question that I have again for everybody, for Bo as well as the audience, of course, you guys, the audience, can't answer it. So, Bo, you try to answer this one.
All right.
Have you seen people discriminating against somebody else?
Have I seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
How, again? If you can give me an example.
We have to talk about whether it's discrimination or not, because like we just said, everyone gets discriminated about for different things, but we never really define what discrimination is going to be in this point. But say people like making fun of other people, like saying some people will discriminate against others for, say, something as simple as liking country music versus metal, right?
Of course, if you want to go picky, then that goes forever.
Exactly. Right. So where do you stop, or what are we talking about?
Actually, I'm going to get to this one, that, what do we call as discrimination? And now the third question, again, for everybody, audience, and you, Bo, you answer it, obviously.
All right.
Do you discriminate against others?
Yep.
On what basis normally? And I will answer to all of those myself.
It could be many different things. Usually it is between, like, say, if you talk to someone and you just don't like what they're talking about, or an attitude they bring or something like that, that would be my form of discrimination, and that would just be like not being around those people anymore.
This is not discrimination. Actually, this is exactly where I want to go. What is it discrimination, or is it a vetting process? And this vetting that I'm saying, if it comes to employment, as well as, finding friends, or, just to hang out with somebody.
Well, then what is, when you're talking about discrimination, what are you even talking about? Or are you talking more about stereotyping?
That is, stereotyping will definitely lead to discrimination for sure. And I will get there. I'm going to have some examples that I will see what you have to say, and then I'll let you know what I think.
Well, back a couple episodes ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we were making fun of, like, big tough guy, whatever, you know, making the voice, and it was funny. And that was stereotyping. And then, was that discrimination?
No.
Okay.
Making fun of each other and being silly and this kind of thing is just fine.
Okay.
I said, if you want to be that accurate, then nobody can talk.
Right.
And life becomes miserable because nobody can speak.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. I'm going to go, normally I just say that now I have to take it a bit further. To be sensitive is good, but sometimes when you're too sensitive, it's too far. And what I mean by that, normally, say for example, safety is a very important thing. When it comes to an aeroplane, for a plane to fly, safety is very important, right? Because a mistake can be, disastrous. But if we apply the same level of sensitivity and safety that we have for a plane for our cars, do you know what would happen? 95% of the cars should stay in home. And then it paralyzes everything. So safety is good. But at one point, we are going too far with this. So when it comes to the concept of discrimination, if you want to consider that discrimination, then we should not do that, then it will be nobody has to talk or can talk and has to think 10 times before they say a word. And again, it can be misunderstood, which paralyzes the whole thing. Or we should have just disregard, no, that's okay, we can discriminate, which again is not correct. So let us stay real. That is where I'm going. The way I see discrimination is this. This is the definition that I have. Discrimination is that if, for example, let's say you apply for a job, or, I want to, let's say for friends, I want to be friends with. If you have the qualification for the job or the characteristic that I like to see in a friend, but simply because of for example, some of the things that you're not in control of, I would normally call them inherited identity, would be, for example, your color of skin, your gender, your sexual orientation, I don't know, where you were born, the language, your original language, or if you have an accent, the things that you can't control. If I write you off based on those things, which has nothing to do with the job, then that becomes discrimination. Of course, if I want to, for example, hire somebody who has to speak proper English, but you cannot speak English, then you don't qualify for the job. It's not against you. It's just you can't speak the proper English. So discrimination is when those characteristics do not affect the job or the requirement to be a good friend, but we use them. We will get there. When I put some examples, it will start to make more sense.
Oh, it makes sense.
So basically,
I understand what you're saying. What inherited identity and things that you can't control being what people judge you on.
So basically, we want to be, again, careful with those things. And for example, to answer to the same question, have I been discriminated? For sure. And I will bring it up in some examples. Do I see people getting discriminated? Yes. But nearly, to be honest, not as much. In all honesty, it's not that much. Do I discriminate against people? Absolutely, I do. The way I do it, I mean, it is not fair, but I'm going to say this. For example, I go for this class that, for exercise. That's a group, exercise that we do. And there is limited set of weights. And there are these two ladies that they come and if they are there, they get there before me, they take them. One of them is prettier than the other one. So if the prettier one takes the weight, I'm not getting as irritated as the other one. That is the discrimination a little bit. A kind of.
Huh.
Of course, obviously, I don't take any action on it, I can't, and I don't.
Yeah.
But, it is a little bit of a favoritism, let's say, or disfavoritism, because favoritism is the opposite of the discrimination.
Right. Yeah.
So those kind of things we do all the time. For example, let's say for me, some of the stuff are more important. For example, the way that somebody or takes care of himself physically, or the way that they dress. So that is a preference that I have.
But that's not inherited identity.
That is correct. That is actually,
right.
Very good point.
So that's something altogether different. So
that a very good point. Yeah, it's not inherited, but I value, for example, those kind of things, which is, and then so because of that, if I see two different people, I normally like to get closer to the one who, again, take care of their physique, as well as, is it fair or not? That's a different story. But I get more favoritism. I'm more inclined to be with those people. So again, discrimination is a bit different. Discrimination, and I'm going to bring up some examples to see if it's discrimination or not.
That's interesting, because now I have to rethink answers. Like when you ask, do I discriminate? And against those things, I want to say, well, yes, but I can't think of any times where I have.
This is exactly where I'm going.
So
discrimination is not as frequent as we say or we think. This is exactly what I'm trying to get at. Now I'm going to go back to a few things. For example, I go to the Lawson in here for a workout. At one point, we had to show our cards that if we are vaccinated or not. Mm-hmm. At one point, for example, I get in. The guy has seen me several times coming in, so he didn't ask for my card, and they went in. And then another friend of mine came, but the guy didn't know this friend, and asked him. He said that's not fair. I said, yes, it is. His job is just to find out if you are vaccinated or not. At one point, this was needed.
Yeah.
And he knows I am. So why should he do it again? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as a discrimination of any type or favoritism by any means. Again, during the terrorism and things, and myself, being a male with the name Mohammed, when I would go to States, at the custom office, I had to go and answer some questions. This was something that if I was not a Muslim, and they did that to certain countries. It was not just the Muslims. It was some of, for example, I believe Serbian or something, one of these East European countries. It was against them too, that they were on this watch list, whatever that they call it, and they would go for a certain age group and primarily male. So they would ask that, where you're going, when you're coming back and all that. So would you think it's discrimination or not?
Maybe, but I mean, to a purpose, I guess, right? Because you have to take, with that climate or whatever, you'd have to take certain things into consideration, right?
This is exactly personally.
So what do you do?
Mm-hmm. Personally, I don't find it discrimination. It is what they do. Did I agree with the process of it? Not really, especially because, for example, sometime when I wanted to fly back, the custom office closes at 7 p.m. in Minneapolis. So my flight, for example, I would go from Vegas to, this one case it happened, from Vegas to Minneapolis, but I get there past 7. So the custom office is closed, and I have to go and report to them. And then I cut my flight and came back to Regina. The next time that they went, they said that if you do that, you can get into trouble. I said, you know what, to be honest, I do have all the respect for the rules and things, although I don't agree with this rule. But if it's going to be that way, I tend not to come to the States. So I made a choice. And they said, you know what, you can do this. There was another process that I could go and do that, but it was a lengthy process for somebody who's a common traveler. They could do that. Then you don't have to do that. They didn't have to go to the custom office. But I didn't bother with that, and I didn't go to the States as much. But do I find that as a discrimination? No. It was something that they are doing. Do I agree with it? That's another story. That person I didn't. Another thing is that, for example, when you go to, again, being a Muslim, you know, I mean, with a Muslim name, by the way, I'm an atheist, in case. For example, when we go to airport, you know, sometimes people, they would ask if they would check me a bit further, or I would get a cavity search. I said, no. As a matter, they have been very respectful. Nothing has happened. Just once it happened that I want to do a self-check-in, and then I had to go in. They said, sorry, it was just because of the name. I said, it's cool. So personally, I don't find it any problem. But somebody can decide to get offended.
Right.
Then another one, for example, when I came to Canada at the beginning, I worked in the hospital in Saskatoon. And I can just tell you this from the get-go. Myself, I would not hire myself from 20 years ago. And the reason, again, is not discrimination. I don't discriminate against myself, but I do discriminate against the behavior, because at that time I was in a different,
That's the vetting, though.
Correct, exactly. So it's not discrimination. That's exactly where I'm going. It's a vetting process, yes.
Okay.
Of course, now that I brought this subject up, normally I say that, so what shall we do with these individuals that they don't fit in? Shall we exclude them, or shall we somehow soften the rules and to get them in? This is another story for another night, but I believe we have to soften it and let them get in somehow. We have to give them a chance.
Get into what?
For example, workforce, or when it comes to, let's say, we want to find friends, to let them, come into the community in a way. We don't want to exclude them as easy.
But don't the people who don't fit into your community fit into another community that they would fit into better? And the way that you define community, like running community, and that you can be a member of many different communities. So one person, we already kind of discussed this before, how
you have different aspects.
Right. So I mean, to say, well, I need to soften to allow someone into my particular community or something. Well, why? Maybe they don't belong there, or maybe they don't want to be a part of it.
And that is fair enough. But what I'm trying to say, that sometimes though, for example, now statistically they say, if your name, let's say, is Ibrahim Abdul Qasim, I'm just making that up.
Okay.
Something like that, and you apply for a job, and then the chances are more for you to get a no answer, or your resume doesn't get looked at, versus if your name is John Doe. So by simply changing the name,
well, I don't think that. You might want to use something else. I don't think anyone's
maybe John Doe doesn't get the job too.
No.
But the moral of the story is that, yes, there is some discrimination that, by simply changing the name. So what I'm trying to get at is say that we have to have some leniency. Otherwise, the society in the big picture will lose more than they gain. So, but that's another story for another night.
That's agreed. Yeah.
Another one that I would like to say, for example, this was some time ago. As you know, I have built this house in this new area. Not new area. The area is old, but the house is new, and I'm new to the area. Once I told my neighbor that the other neighbor, I'm trying to make an eye contact and say hi, but he's shying away. And then his response was, he's racist. I said, how do you know that? Do you know the guy? He said, no. I said, has he talked to you? He said, no. I said, is he racist against you then? And all of them are white. I said, how can you draw that conclusion? Yeah. My first thought was, he's a shy guy. That's all. Can I be right or wrong? I don't know too. Yeah. But I'm not going to call it discrimination or racism or something.
Right.
So it is all in my head. If I want, even if it's the fact that said he's shy, I don't know. I have nothing to prove it or disapprove it. So
Yes, some people don't like direct eye contact.
yeah, or maybe doesn't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just fine. But again, I'm not going to call it, as I said, racism or something like that. And I don't think it is. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say, I keep going back to this thing that, racism is not as common as we think. But, it happens in a lot of different aspects. I had a lady that, she said that after she went through the divorce, then her friends who are married, they don't call her in as much, that they don't invite her over. So that is another discrimination of a type.
That's a vetting.
I don't know.
By your own definition.
That is correct. And
that's
actually,
not inherited. And that's
identity.
Being married isn't an inherited identity. Or being single.
That is, that is correct. That is correct. And as I said, what? To be honest, if they don't want you there, then maybe they were not the best friends to begin with. If they are just writing you off,
those things.
Maybe they are writing you off as simple as the fact that you got divorced. Maybe they were not the best friends to begin with. Maybe you should have watched my podcast 2 years ago, which didn't exist.
Oh no!
Then you would have picked the right ones.
Maybe they just didn't want to invite her to be included with a bunch of family stuff because they thought she'd be uncomfortable.
Again. We are making things up now.
These things.
But again, often, these things, as I said, discrimination is not as frequent as we think. Now, I would like just to make it very quickly in here. And sometimes when they do discriminate, to be honest, it is simply, it's not intentional. It is the mistakes that we make. For example, when, I should say, a very good friend of mine, she's one of my best friends, actually. For example, once she said I was a bit persistent on something. She said, Mo.
Wait, what did you say? Persistent or
persistive? No, persistive.
Persistive?
Yeah.
What?
No,
Okay.
Me, no.
Define that, please.
I was a bit persistent on something. And then she said, Mo, all Iranian are like this? Then I said, you know what? Yes. The other day there was this Iranian who was not persistent enough. So two of us, we got him with his arms and legs, and we swung him 1, 2, and 3. We threw him in Iraq. We said, you are not persistent enough. I said, are you kidding me? This is where I'm going with this thing. We had this conversation in another podcast that I said, if somebody makes a mistake, if we make a mistake, we say, oh my God, that was just one mistake, not the whole me. If you make a mistake, I'll say, or somebody else, we say that it's the whole person is a mistake. It's not just one mistake, it's just the whole person.
Right.
Now,
I remember. Okay.
When it comes to this kind of case scenarios, it becomes the whole nation and the whole continent and the whole race.
Yeah.
It becomes so generalized. Did she do that intentionally? Absolutely not. She was just not aware. And we do this. Or for example, another friend of mine once, she says, oh, your house is a bit different, and things. And then which part of it is Iranian? I said, to be honest, none of it. I don't know. I left Iran years ago, and I have been in Canada for lots of years, and I just built it the way that I like it. Mm-hmm. But she kept insisting, which part of it is Iranian? I said, the windows. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
That's it. I love this lady. She's an awesome cook, so she can tell me anything, and it's just fine as long as you give me some food.
That makes me think of something that, and maybe most of the audience can relate to this as well, or not. I don't know. But when I grew up in the 90s, right? And we were always taught you judge a person by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, and or race or whatever, right? And it seems to me like when you talk about that, like someone saying, well, what part of your original culture is, but they're not taking you into account as an individual, or they don't want to or something, right? When did things all go back to that? Because I thought we were coming out of that. Like you're not supposed to judge anyone, and like except for their actions, right? You judge people by their actions, not by their cultural identity or inherited identity, right?
We make this mistake.
When did it fall it feels like we're going backwards.
At times, yeah, for sure. At times you do. For example, as I said, if, for example, in this case scenario, I should say, for example, a white man from Canada does something different, we'll say that he did differently.
They say what?
If somebody they do something different, we say that person does that thing differently.
Right.
But if it is of a different culture, we say that the whole culture is doing it that way.
Right.
It becomes the whole culture. It's like the terrorism that it happened. All of a sudden, all the Muslims, 1.6 billion of them are terrorists. And they get looked at that way. Because it's a sense of familiarity that we have, and then we just change it up. We just generalizing it in a very unreasonable way.
Right.
And sometimes we do that. It's just because of the ignorance. In all honesty, it is all the matter of ignorance, and we need a little bit of education around that.
Yeah.
And don't take me wrong. This is not only done from the white man towards the immigrants. Oh, trust me, the immigrants does it to the Canadian. Actually, I should tell you this case. I just remember this. I had one of my somebody that I know. She's working at the hospital. She said that if she's an immigrant, she said that if she makes a mistake of a different color, by the way, and different accent, she said that if she makes a mistake, the Canadian, those people, this was her word, those people, they pick on her a little bit more than if it was a white person making the same mistake. I said, when you say those people, who do you exactly mean? Well, the Canadian. I said, when you say Canadian, because we have the black Canadian, we have white Canadian, we have in between Canadian, we have all of them. No, the white Canadian. I said, you mean all of them? Well, no. And then at the end, digging into it, she said, no, just the older ladies. I said, so that is good. So I said, does the new generation do that too? He said, no, actually they don't. The younger ones, they don't do as much. The older generation, which makes a kind of a sense because they have learned something differently and they are more picky. They are doing it intentionally. I don't think so, to be honest. It's just that they have learned, and they now they see a difference, and then they kind of get scared, or they become more picky on that.
Or it could just be because they're old. Like you were saying, it's half yourself, what you think.
But they do that towards her, and I believe that. I have seen that stuff, that they are more picky about her than a Canadian. Why? Because the Canadian has more similarity to them.
In-group preference, whatever.
Yes, yeah. So we do that, a kind of lack of familiarity. But anyway, so when we discriminate, it's just that, something we do a wrong correlation to. The wrong correlations are, for example, I'm just, this has nothing to do with nothing, but it is a correlation. I had a patient of mine. One day she comes, she has some back problem, and I do a series of treatment basically on her. I do, let's say we call it mobilization. I do that. I put the rib back in place, and then I do ultrasound and TENS. And then she feels quite a bit better. Then she says, the ultrasound helped me. I said, no. The most important one was what I did, that I put the rib back in place. The second most important was the TENS machine, because that increased the spasm and the cramping that you had in the area. Yes, the ultrasound helped too, but not as much as the two. But she didn't want to believe me.
She didn't think that putting the rib back in place was a big deal?
She was more prone to believing that the ultrasound machine helped us. She was sort of discriminating between my machines. The reason was because her friend had told her that the ultrasound is going to cure you. So she comes with a preset thought that, this is going to make me better. Seldom it happens, by the way. She says seldom it happens, but it did happen. That basically they come and anyways, it was discriminating between the treatment methods. So we do this very frequently. That for example, as I said, when we go for the sense of familiarity, if you're a little bit different than me, then I will generalize a bit easier on you. If you're more similar to me, you're closer to me, or like me, then your difference is only that difference, not the whole thing. But if you have more differences, that difference is the whole thing, And then afterwards, I take it to the whole race, to the whole continent, to the whole, just we generalize it a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, that's like that. That's just the theory of in-group preference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll do that for like large-scale stereotyping, so you can kind of get a handle on something, right? And then you deal with the individual like afterwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all we're talking about here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Okay. And one thing I want to say that, I want to get to the end of this thing that, one way to self-check, because often we don't mean to be, to do wrong. Mm-hmm. Often we don't really.
Well, although sometimes we need to do that, right? To you have to discern whether someone or something will be a threat or not.
You mean a vetting process? I'm not understanding.
Yeah. See, I'm vetting now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, we do separate, we do group people, it's fair, but as long as it's done, as I said, based on non-inherited part, that they are not related to the, if it is related to the what we want them, mm-hmm. then that's fair. That is how we vet, we decide yay or nay. But if it has nothing to do with that process, then we are favorites or doing favoritism, or we're doing disfavoritism, and both can go the wrong way, and both of us will hurt us. I will get to another one, in the next probably podcast that I'm going to have. But one thing that I would normally suggest for self-checking for the discrimination is this, to see are we really discriminating, is that if we can, for example, let's say somebody does something and we visualize the person in the picture of somebody that we like doing the same thing. And then to see, are we discriminating that way? Am I clear on that? So to visualize the characters, but in a person that we like, with a different shape or different, things that we like, and then to see, are we discriminating?
Yeah, that's still vetting.
No. We want to check.
If I say, well, say someone does something stupid, and then I say, well, if my friend did that, I still think that's vetting.
Okay, no. Okay, let me go back to this. My thing that I said, that we have this limited set of weights. That, if one of the girls takes it, I'm just okay with that. If the other one takes it, I get a little bit mad. Because one is prettier than the other one. So you have to just picture this. If the same behavior happens by somebody else whom you like, how would you feel? If the feeling changes, then you have been discriminating. If you do the same thing, for the same behavior, I react the same way, then it's not discrimination. That's what I'm saying. Am I making sense there?
Just let me get it straight in my mind then. So you're saying don't think of it like the example I said was like a friend. You're saying don't view it as like your friend of yours doing it. View it as a person who looks different doing it.
Not just friend, but anybody. I'm going to go back to this lady that I said of a different color, different race, different with an accent, that she said she gets picked on by the old white lady a bit more. Now, if the old white lady wants really to a self-check to see if the same behavior that this person exhibited, if it is exhibited by, let's say, a white lady or a white man, would she say the same thing? If the answer is yes, then you haven't been discriminating. You have the same behavior. Maybe you're just a person that you're hard on people. Maybe.
Yeah.
But if your action is going to be different, or your reaction, I should say, if it's different, then in that case, probably you have been discriminating. So it is one way of just to self-check that are we really have been fair or not?
Okay.
So at the end, the question that I have for everybody, I hope first of all you have enjoyed the podcast, and again I would love to hear from you guys, and the best way to get a hold of us is by email, info@lifeworkshop.ca. And the second thing, please visit the website. I put a lot of this writing, a lot of the highlights, I put it in a writing format on our YouTube channel as well as the website itself, which is lifeworkshop.ca. But the question of the day is this: what basis do you discriminate people against? And do you? Most likely we do, because people who discriminate, they are not coming from the moon. It's just us. You discriminate against me, I do it against you. That is how it works. But what basis do we do that? And then, do you need to do anything about that? That's the other question.
And can you tell the difference if it's discrimination or vetting?
Actually, that's, as I said, yeah. And actually, you have to understand, is it really discrimination or is it a vetting process? And vetting process is not just for, as I said, for job, it's for being friends and these things. And then for that one, as I said, do that self-check. Change the shape of the person or the accent or the religion or whatever that the thing you might be discriminating to something that you like, and see if your answer stays the same or changes. Okay. So thanks for listening, and hopefully we will be back with another episode. Thanks. Bye-bye now.
Bye.